This month's video is about drawing the portrait. Again, this time the portrait is facing out at us. And I'm using this example. This is what my demonstration was from my latest workshop, drawing the portrait from photos. And what I'm going to focus on today, since I already started to work on the eyes, was to go down into the nose. A lot of people have difficulty with noses, so that's why I'm going to focus on this area. Also because I don't want to finish anything up here before making my way all the way down and then looping back up and then finishing it sort of as a whole to make sure everything works well together. So I've sort of gotten things placed, I've started to develop, I've put in some of the values in the eyes, but it's really, that was for mostly just demonstration on how to finish and do something like that. But really, when you're working, it's much better to sort of work the whole thing at the same time. So I will start with the nose today. You can see from my drawing that I've established the sides of the nose, the nostril holes here, and the shadow. And looking over here, we can try and see those lines, even if they're not very distinguishable on our reference. It's a good idea to have them placed and then make them less distinguishable later. So you can see here nostril, nostril holes, and then how I looked to find the shape of the shadow and how it sort of cupped and looped around, down, and across. So this is the cast shadow part, and this is the form shadow part. And I filled that in. So what I'm going to do now is try and make it look more round and talk you through it. I'm going to use the 2B pencil to set my darks. We do this with painting as well. Sort of lay in what our darkest darks are to help us get the rest of the value structure quicker rather than sneaking up to it the whole time. So the 2B pencil can go nice and dark. And I'm stepping back and I'm looking at my shapes and trying to make sure that the anatomy is still working as I do this. There's also a lot of dark on this side of the nose. So I'll go ahead and put that in as well. I'd like to start to connect it with the darks that I've established in the eyes. So very sort of gradually making my way down. I like to think about the nose in terms of its parts. So we have the bridge of the nose, and then we have the ball of the nose, we have the wings of the nostrils, we have the nostrils or the nostril holes. We also have the side of the nose on either side where it then connects to the front of the face. And it's really important when you're looking at your values and your halftones and your shadows to know these things and to think about these things as you're drawing. Because the reason that the shadows are doing certain things or the halftones are getting lighter or darker in a certain area is because of the structure. So I'm just going to do a layer of darks here to sneak up to my initial darks. Something that's more of the overall shadow color. stepping back to observe. Okay, then I'm going to look at the other darkest part of the shadow, which rides around the ball of the nose. So if we look at this area here, we can see that there's a little bit of light here, and there's a little bit of light down here. And it's this part of the shadow that's not receiving that little bit of light that I am putting in. Still using that 2B just to make sure that I can go dark enough. What I'm going to do though is switch to my HB and see if it does go as dark as I need it to. Yeah, it does. Good. So the HB has a little bit more control, it's less soft. Makes for less of a grainy drawing and more of a smooth drawing. Okay. So now that I put those in, I just want to look at those darks and make sure that they are dark enough. And I don't want the nostrils to stand out as darker than the eyes. So I'm going to be very careful about sort of matching those things. I'm glad to do this video and give you guys a close-up of what it's like to work on a drawing like this, because I know in class sometimes it can be hard to see exactly what the teacher's doing if there's 8 of you or whatever in the class. So this gives you sort of what it looks like from my perspective. So I switched now to an H. If I had a 2H, I'd be using it, but I actually don't. So I'm using an H, which is fine. The 2H would just be a little bit harder. And what I'm doing now is working out of the shadows a little bit. And I'm doing this because when you are working out of the shadows, that darkest halftone is the most important halftone, because it describes the form as it turns away from the light in the last moment. I'm also going to try and smooth some of this out a little bit. The H is really good for that. Smoothing, filling in dots. So the H is good because it can sneak up on values. You want to go darker, 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 but gradually, in a way that doesn't go too dark in the halftones too quick. And so I'm thinking about also the other side of the nose, the other side of the bridge of the nose. And by putting that in, I can start to acknowledge the actual form and how it's turning, how the light is wrapping around, coming from the right side. An important thing that helps make the nose look like the nose is the softness around the bottom of the nostril. So it doesn't ever look like it comes to a forced stop with an outline. Kind of making little circles helps. Went back to my slightly darker pencil, my HB. Now I'm going to go back to my H and look at where the wings of the nostrils begin. So in other words, the other side of the ball of the nose. Because if I can establish where the ball is, then I can start to make that look sort of round, as it kind of is here, with the lightest part in the middle. But it's especially important to get this to look like the underside of the nose. Even if it's receiving light, we still need to make it look like it's turning under. Right in there. Now I'm going to come around from the darker part of the ball, or what I had established as the darker halftones of the ball, and sneak up to where that light is hitting the most. In this case, right here. I want to make sure that I do get that contrast. And that's going to be the white of the paper. So the skin and the cartilage on the wing of the nose tucks in and around, which means that we need to soften this edge right around here. So again, there's no hard lines. It really helps to have a nice sharp point when you do this. Okay, so it's kind of at this point that it's important to step back and see if I'm starting to get the light effect. What I'm going to do actually is go in with a white eraser, a skinny Tombow eraser. This is it right here, Tombow. And I'm going to try and get that highlight in if I can. Just make sure that it is the pure white of the paper, and then from there I can go and start to work around it so I have that same amount of contrast. So I know that if that's the white of the paper, I'm gonna have to go a little bit darker around it. To get that same amount of contrast, to really make it look like it is a highlight. So I'm sneaking up on it, and if I have to go darker around the highlight, that also means that I'll probably have to go darker next to that as well until I get into the shadow again. So I'm very aware of sort of the domino effect of shading. If you make one thing lighter or darker, then everything else kind of becomes affected. But I'm holding off a little bit on that to try and see if I can push these halftones and leave the shadows close to where they are. I don't think that they're too far, too much darker than that. I do want to get the halftones figured out a little bit more. So when we're in control of making something look round or not, that's exactly what it is. It's a control. And the subtleties in the halftones do a lot. And one of the things that's really important, and I think that maybe people don't necessarily realize, is that the smoother that you make it, the more value gradations it looks like you can have. So I'm gonna go and really try and make this look smooth. And as I do that, it starts to help me make it look like, let's say there's more like 10 values or 12 values instead of just, I don't know, 6. So I have my dirty eraser here. My dirty eraser is a great tool because it won't pick up all the way to the white of the paper. So I can go in and start to pick out some of the dots. We call this dot picking at Angel Academy. We would spend a lot of time smoothing out our drawings and dot picking. And I think it really adds a certain beautiful quality to the work when you don't get caught up in the fact that it looks like graphite, but it just looks like a portrait. So if we can get rid of some of these, I'm just trying to touch on the darkest dots. If we can get rid of some of those like that, and then go back in with the H or the 2H, and fill in the sort of lighter dots next to those areas that were left. Then we end up taking away the lights that are too light, taking away the darks that are too dark, and we are left with a beautiful smooth tone. And it's those in-between values that make something look like it's really turning. Like really turning. We're trying to fool the eye here. Full of the eye, and I think it's starting to work. You don't want to go too dark, so you want to make sure that you are reserving those lightest lights. Make sure that they stay the white of the paper. Sorry for that background noise. It's time to cut the grass, I guess. Yeah, here we go. Get some light sneaking up in there. I'm gonna go in and darken that shadow just a little bit more. Get some lost edges in there, because we don't want things to look outlined, like really outlined. When things are outlined, they look a little bit more illustrative or cartoonish. And it's really those lost edges that give magic to a piece. Give that realism, give it that extra boost. Gotta go darker in those nostrils because I lost that value contrast. Lost the shapes. There. I also like to surround what I'm working on too, so you know, to end the nose here might not be as convincing as putting a little bit of value out and around that nose to give it a sense of place. And looking at sort of the fall of light, or the hierarchy of light over here, we can see that this should be lighter than anything around here. So it's okay not to leave that the white of the paper. I do like these little circles. So I don't want the ball of the nose to look too big either, and it's beginning to. So I need to look at reestablishing the essential shapes a little bit. Where does the ball of the nose end? There. And then over here, sneak in with the H. Now that I made that darker, we could put some more dark tone next to this. Not to lose the edge, but to help get the shape in there so it doesn't look too round. It has more planes. Pretty dark on this side of the face too, so. More of a lost edge in here. Getting it to turn down into the lips will be really nice. But that will make a really long video, so I'll have to split the video up into a few parts. But can you guys see how I'm trying to hold on to the edge of this cast shadow, but soften it? It's so soft. It really is diffused at the edge. I can go darker in here. this point, it doesn't become about any lines. It becomes more about transitions. How to get things to sort of melt into one another without losing their edges. And one of the things that I think you'll start to find after you do your shape exercises and all the other exercises that you're doing to train your eye is as you start to train your eye to see, to really, really see, you'll notice more and more about what you're looking at, the subject. You'll see more transitions. You'll see it as less jumpy and more soft. And that takes time, but I think to be able to watch someone, like in this video, to be able to watch and see how I'm pulling out all of those subtle transitions and to have it here as well will hopefully help you to really be able to see better and quicker. I think also a soft touch is key. I'm barely skimming the surface here.